Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Happy to Be Here. Episode? Installment? Yeah, that's what it is. It's an episode. I'm having an episode. Welcome back to another Happy to Be Here. This is a series on my channel where I share little thoughts about big things. If you missed the previous 2 episodes, I will link the Happy to Be Here playlist down below. Now let's just dive into today's topic. Recently, I have been thinking a lot about communication and relational dynamics, particularly, that is a hard word to say, specifically about how in the world we are supposed to get our needs met. We all have needs. Dad, stop Marcoing me. We all have needs, big ones, little ones, and they're there to be met. Maybe by ourselves, by our friends, by romantic partners, by God. And we are all communicating all of the time. We are communicating to everyone around us. But the communication I want to chat about today is mainly the kind that takes place within bonded relationships. Relationships where there is some level of intimacy and commitment, some level of knowing each other. So this could be in a romantic relationship or in platonic friendships, but it's not the coworker that you share niceties with in the hall. It's not the communication you have with the grocery store clerk at checkout. This is about the communication within bonded relationships, because that's the context in which we get a lot of our needs met. It's not Linda at work who is responsible to meet your needs, and you don't expect her to. It's your spouse or your partner, your close friends, your family. These are the people who are responsible to you, and you are responsible to them. I feel like it is really important to be part of some kind of community where we are responsible for each other. That might sound like an ugly word to you, or maybe an ugly way of phrasing it, and maybe we can break that down in another video if y'all want. But I think that humans thrive when they are tied to something, to a place, to a community, to a certain set of relationships. It grounds us. And part of that is the responsibility that we feel for those people and for that place. It is good and healthy and right to feel that sense of responsibility. And it's not overly burdensome. It's like lifting the proper amount of weight at the gym. It might be difficult, but it also strengthens you. It's good for you. And in the absence of lifting those weights, when we don't have any context where we take a healthy responsibility for others, then parts of ourself can start to decay. Use it or lose it, baby. Anyway, that is a different video. Today is about communication. But what I want to talk about is in the context of this bonded relationship where there is some level of depth, where the participants have taken some sort of responsibility for each other. They are responsible to each other in some way. I'm not saying that this won't apply in other scenarios, but I feel like it is most prevalent in the context of these deeper relationships. So here's my first thought. People can't meet your needs if you don't ask. Now, I know what you're gonna say, or at least I know what pops up in my head when I hear that. And that is that asking is scary. People can't meet your needs if you don't ask, but asking feels scary because it's vulnerable to ask. It can feel exposing. It's like when my dog Junie comes to me and asks for belly rubs. It requires that she roll over on her back and expose her belly to me. This soft, tender part of herself that's not protected by bone. And when she does that, she isn't just asking. She's trusting. She's asking for what she needs, and she's trusting that I won't hurt her. But the asking is risky for her. Technically, she could spend her whole life up on 4 legs, never exposing her belly, and just existing perpetually in need of belly rubs, but never being willing to take the risk of exposing her belly and asking. And I think it can be the same when we ask for something from the people that we love and are committed to. The act of asking requires that we expose ourselves in some way, that we reveal a softer, more tender part of ourselves, a part that is less shielded and less protected, and that's scary. People could hurt us. People could say no. But in my experience, even the people who love us the most, the people who care about us and want to meet our needs, still aren't very good at reading minds. And so the asking part is essential. If you choose not to expose that tender part of yourself to anyone, if you choose never to ask, then it will be much, much harder for the people in your life to meet your needs because they may not even know that they exist. People can't meet your needs if you don't ask, and asking requires trust. The amount of trust may vary depending on what you're asking for, but it is always there. There is no true asking apart from trust. Now, I am someone who used to really struggle with this, and it is still something that I have to be very intentional about. I used to hate to ask people for things because I hated to be vulnerable. It felt so much more comfortable and easy and safe to just meet my own needs. And I used to think that if someone really cared about me, they would anticipate my needs without me having to ask. And I found myself hurt in friendships, especially because I was just constantly waiting for a good friend, waiting for a friend who would see me, who would be sensitive to my preferences, who would care enough to consider what I needed or wanted without me having to say a thing. Because if someone really cared about me, they would anticipate my needs, right? Wrong. That's wrong. People care. They really do. There are people in your life who have the capacity to care for you. But caring has very little to do with someone's ability to read minds. There are people in your life who want to be there for you, but you still have to ask. A quick side note about volume. When I first started asking for what I needed, when I first started to share my preferences with the people in my life, I used to feel like I was shouting, like even just saying anything at all. I would really love if you went to this with me, for example. Just a simple sentence. I felt like I couldn't have been speaking louder if I tried. Because for me, the norm was saying nothing. The norm was silence. So anything compared to silence feels really loud. But I have found that there are relationships, friends that I adore, who hear my shouts as whispers. And in order for them to hear what I am saying, in order for them to see my preferences or my need, I have to turn the volume up. I have to provide more detail. I have to be more forthright and open and bold in order for them to hear me. So instead of just saying, I would really love if you would come to this with me, and then acting nonchalant like you don't care either way, give them more detail. Be more bold. Say, I would really love if you would come to this with me. I'm realizing that this event is really important to me, and it would mean so much if you were there to support me. You are such a significant person in my life, and your presence would mean the world. First of all, they may not know all of that. And saying, I wish you would come, and then acting nonchalant like you're cool either way is not the same as communicating all of that. You may feel all of that when you're asking, but that doesn't mean that they know that or that that is what they're hearing. The best, most effective communication happens out loud, not in your head. And if you want to be heard and you want to be understood, you have to say things clearly out loud. Way more vulnerable, I know, way more scary. And if you're a person who is not used to putting your preferences out there, it's gonna feel like you're screaming your head off. But I can guarantee that there are people in your life who need that clarity. They need that boldness from you. For them, you are speaking at a normal volume. You feel like you're shouting, like you're being so bold, but for them, they can actually hear you. Maybe for the first time, they can actually see that you're asking for something. That's just something that I've noticed. Not everyone hears at the same volume, and people can't meet your needs if you don't ask in a way that they can hear. Now, your heart might be saying, what if I ask and it's too much for them? What if my needs are overwhelming? Well, actually, as the asker, it is not your responsibility to determine what someone else can or can't handle. As the asker, it is your responsibility to ask, and it is their responsibility to answer. And oftentimes we choose not to ask because we are making the decision for someone else. We are trying to do our relational job and theirs. Of course, there are exceptions to this rule. If you had a friend who just had a baby a week ago, maybe hold off on asking them for something. Use your best judgment. But a lot of the time, we look at someone who is just living their life. They are not uniquely stressed or burdened, and we decide that our request would be too much for them. We decide on their behalf that meeting our need would be too much, and we don't even ask. But that is not our job. I'll repeat this because it's really important. Deciding what someone can or can't handle is not your job. Your job is to ask, and their job is to decide if they can or can't. And let me tell you a little secret. People love to be needed. It's empowering. In a healthy relationship, big caveat, I know, but in a healthy relational dynamic, it is wonderful to be relied upon. So give people the opportunity to meet your needs and ask. Don't rob them of that. Give them the opportunity and ask. Now we're going to switch perspectives and talk about being on the other side of things. Now we are the one who is being asked for something. What is our responsibility? The asker is doing their thing, they're doing their job, and asking, what is our job? If you are asked to do a thing, big or little, really doesn't matter, and you can't do it, or you don't want to do it for some reason, it is your responsibility to say no. The whole communication thing breaks down when we start to say things that we don't mean. If we start giving half-hearted yeses just to be nice, or because we really wish that we could. As the person who is being asked, it is your responsibility to look inside of yourself, to look at your capacity, your energy levels, your time availability, and to consider all of the other things that you've already committed to, and to come up with an honest answer, a yes or a no. One thing that can get in the way of giving a true answer, especially when it comes to bigger commitments, is not taking enough time to consider, not feeling comfortable enough to ask for time to consider. If someone emails you asking if you want to lead something or host something for the next 6 months, email them back and say, that sounds amazing. Let me take some time to think about it. I'll get back to you in about a week with my answer. Give yourself time, especially with larger commitments, to consider, to take stock of what's going on inside of you before you respond. Because the person who's asking is going to take your yes or your no and believe you. And in my experience, people appreciate honest communication. You might think that you're letting someone down, but that is so much better than giving a yes that you don't mean, or saying yes and then taking it back. That's so much more hurtful than communicating clearly the first time. Let's take a smaller example. Let's say that your spouse asks for a back rub. They're asking for something that they need, something that they would like, and it is your responsibility to decide if you have the capacity, the willingness, the desire to give that. There are a lot of ways that this interaction could go, but I think one of the most harmful is you giving a yes that you don't mean and then just stewing in bitterness and resentment toward your partner the whole time that you're giving the back rub. Now you might say, what's the big deal? It's just one back rub. And you're right. If it was just one back rub that you didn't really want to give, but you gave anyway, it probably wouldn't be that big of a deal. But what we're trying to avoid here is establishing a relational dynamic where you are constantly hiding parts of yourself from your spouse. Hiding little parts of yourself again and again and again, little preferences, little opinions, can add up to something big. We're trying to avoid a relational dynamic where they don't really know you, where your spouse or partner or friend doesn't really know you because you keep giving all of these yeses that you don't mean. Communicating honestly is a way for someone to actually get to know you, but it requires that you are honest. It requires that you communicate what's really going on inside of yourself and revealing that to the people outside of yourself. We're also trying to avoid relational dynamics where you're afraid of how your spouse or your friend might respond if you said no, where you feel that your value in the relationship is contingent on how much you give and how consistently you give it. And we're trying to avoid resentment and bitterness from building up in your heart towards the people in your life. Because if you keep giving yeses that you don't mean and they keep taking those yeses and believing you, you will start to feel like they are taking advantage of you and your love. You might not feel that way on the first back rub, but you'll feel it by the 100th. You'll start to feel taken for granted. Being honest with your partner, being honest with your friends, everyone being honest with each other, even if giving the no feels uncomfortable in the moment, will lead to a healthier, more enriching, and more secure relational dynamic over time. Don't wait until you're exhausted and spent from overloading your plate by meeting all of these people's needs when you really should have said no to begin with. Know your capacity. Be honest with yourself about your bandwidth in this current season and communicate with the people around you. So when it comes to getting your needs met, those are the two ends of the relational dynamic as I see it. It's one person's responsibility to ask clearly, and it's one person's responsibility to answer clearly. And when each person is doing their job, friendships and romantic relationship can be so rich and fulfilling and happy. Of course, this is just one tiny sliver of the relational pie, but I think it's an important one. I would love if you would share your thoughts in the comments. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? What has your experience been of getting your needs met in life? Okay, that's all for today. I'll see you guys in the next one.